I mean, it can't be that hard. We should be able to figure something out here. There's the external bite calls or calls that you can make some sounds with. There's the hoochie mama out there. But in my mind, those external cow calls, they make decent cow calls, but they're not very versatile. And then I'm like, well, then how do you bugle? So when I first started, I used some products that were okay, didn't require a mouth reed, but nothing that sounded great or lasted very long. There's calls out there that are like this, where you kind of have to get your lip just right on it. You have to have just enough moisture on it.
Yeah.
And then
It's
you
almost
kind of
like playing a woodwind instrument or something.
yeah. And it was kind of clumsy, and I didn't think the sound was that great. So we built the Enchantress. And so what's great about this call is it cow calls, calf calls. You could estrus buzz in it. Like, you just put it on your bugle tube. You can bugle with it. It's a super loud bugle. Like, if you want to do a location bugle on it, it's probably louder than anything on the market.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the RedBeard Outdoors podcast. I'm Jonathan, your host, and here at RedBeard Outdoors, I talk about faith, family, fitness, and the outdoors. Today, being Saturday, I bring to you a full-length episode where we have a guest on, where we get to talk about either their business, what story they have to tell, maybe a mix of both. Like today, where we've got Bill Ayer from Slayer Calls. Slayer makes some amazing game calls. They're all handmade up there in Idaho. Absolutely love the guys that they have working over there for them as well. They've built the team out pretty awesome. And he's got a great crew behind him there, Bill. And Bill just decided that he wanted to share his story with you guys. So he came and joined me on this episode. I'm really excited to share that with you. So before we get into that episode, guys, I do want to remind you of a couple things. First, if you're watching this in June, go get entered in on that $2,000 archery giveaway that I have going on right now with the partners of the show. They've thrown in over $2,000 worth of gear, from a dialed Arcsos sight to fletchings to a dozen arrows from Victory, a full foam target from Morel. So you get the high roller, you get a stand release, and much more. Go check that out, guys. The link will be down below. Goes through the end of June if you're watching this during June. If you're not, stay tuned for future ones that we have going on as we go throughout the rest of this year. And I just want to say thank you to you guys as we continue to grow. Also, go join us over at RedBeard Outdoors Day One Crew on Facebook and the First Phorm Outdoors Facebook group as well. You're welcome to come in. No purchase required. It's just a group where you get to meet people that are like-minded individuals who want to get better on a day-to-day basis and love the outdoors. All of those links are down below, guys. Now, with that being said, let's get into this conversation with Bill and Slayer Game Calls. Welcome back to the RedBeard Outdoors podcast. I'm Jonathan, your host, and today, guys, I've got a special guest for you. He is the owner and founder of Slayer Calls, Game Calls, and we're going to go over everything from the get-go of how that got started, why it got started, because there's quite a few companies out there with game calls, and what all they have to offer, because I'm not much of a professional caller whatsoever. I can make some good sounds and I can get their attention, but I can tell you that the quality, I ran Slayer Calls last year, and then just got some of their updated information and products here that we're going to go over later in a review. But I'm going to have Bill walk us through a little bit on that. So for people that don't know who you are, Bill, who are you?
Yeah, Bill Ayer with Slayer Calls, founder, like you said, CEO and founder of Slayer. And, we started in waterfowl about 10 years ago. And about 3 years ago, we got into elk calls. So today we carry a full line of duck calls, goose calls, elk calls, predator calls, and turkey calls. We went from a really small company, two of us, to we had our first team kind of getaway or dinner the other Wednesday night, and I think there was 20 folks there. So that's not counting probably another 20 contractors that we use for different things. So, but 20 core people that run Slayer and help do what we do every day.
That's amazing. That's awesome. And that's some significant growth, man, from 3 to 20. And I mean, you're talking about having done this for a decade at this point, starting with waterfowl and then moving into the bigger game calls, predator calls and such. But man, that's a big growth. It's taken some time, but I love highlighting that, because that points out the dedication that it takes to grow a company, and especially a company such as Game Calls that, you know, takes a lot of time, precision, making the product right, and getting it out there to the people.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. And I don't know if everybody saw, I got to plug my computer in, the batteries.
Oh, you're good.
1 second.
You're good. So while he is stepping away to plug in the computer, I just want to point out a couple things here. So last year I ran their mouth calls. So I've got a box of new ones here that I haven't quite broken into yet. But they have the mouth reeds. And we're going to go over a couple things here, such as this. It's the Enchantress. So we'll go over what that is. And then they also have an acrylic mouthpiece bugle tube. And we'll talk about what makes this different compared to other bugle tubes out there. But, with that being said, Bill, let's get started here. Why did you choose Game Calls? I mean, it's a pretty saturated market, and I don't know anything about waterfowl, to be honest with you, and I kind of mentioned that at the beginning, but yeah. I know there's a lot of calls out there. There's a lot of things floating around and different companies. So why did you get started, one, with waterfowl, but two, with a game call company?
Yeah, I mean, it was almost on accident. You know, it started as a hobby. You know, people ask me that all the time, and it's funny because my buddies call me up, you know, randomly on a 1 o'clock on a Friday, like, what are you doing? Sitting there in your office blowing a duck call? You know, they have no clue what I really do all day and whatnot. But, you know, I mean, it starts way, I mean, I'll try to keep it short, but, you know, my dad was a steel worker. My grandpa from Sicily came over. He was a custom furniture maker, custom cabinet maker. An uncle that I was very close to, his parents came over from northern Italy. He was, I think, a third or fourth generation cobbler. So he was a shoe repairman and built shoes his entire life. So I was around a lot of men who use their hands to craft things. And so I played football up through college. And after my football career was over, I didn't know what to do with my life and was trying to find myself. And all my buddies were either going in the finance industry or into software during the whole .com boom thing. And so I wound up in software and did that for 22 years. And it was a pretty stressful environment. You know, the money was good, but I found this on the web. But it was not really what I wanted to do with my life, but kind of was just there doing it and whatnot. So when I get home, I would turn wood. And so I wasn't into custom furniture, cabinets, or doing steel work or anything like that. So what I started doing was turning duck calls. And I've always been passionate with the outdoors, hunting, fishing. I grew up, you know, tailing around my dad, pheasant hunting and deer hunting from the time I could walk. I was out on the boat probably 200 days a year, sturgeon fishing, striper fishing, bass fishing, with my dad or with buddies. And then as I got older, we either water skiing, jet skiing, or fishing on the river. I grew up on the Sacramento and San Joaquin rivers. So it's always been a passion of mine. So I'm like, you know what? And I absolutely loved duck hunting, and I still do to this day. But so I was like, I'll turn some duck calls, see what I can do. And so I did that for probably 20 years. And about 10 years ago, I started giving them out to people. I'm like, here, have a duck call, you know, for a birthday or something. And I gave one of my bosses a couple duck calls, and he was like, dude, these things freaking rip. And he's like, you should like take Slayer to the next level. And I'm like, it's a hobby. Like, how can you make money selling duck calls, right? Like, just like kind of the question, like, how'd you get in the game calls? Like, why game calls? And I had that same mentality. And then the company I was with, we got acquired by Intuit. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to take a year off. I spent, 30 days elk hunting and a bunch of time waterfowl hunting. And I did a lot of hunting with that same gentleman. And he's like, hey, look, why don't you take Slayer to the next level? And I was like, I don't know, and he's like, I'll help you out, and back you on some of this stuff. And I said, all right, well, let's do it. And that was like 3 years ago. So kind of by accident, I got into it. But I mean, now that I'm doing it full time and fully vested, I'm having the time of my life. Like this, I remember graduating from college and I was looking into outdoor spaces to start a career, and I just didn't know how to do it, 23 years old. And I was like, well, do I sell sporting equipment? And I was like, yeah, that doesn't sound too cool, but I just wanted to get my foot in the door somehow, and I couldn't figure out how to do it at the time. And now that I'm in it and I'm talking to folks like you, going into the shows and meeting people like Corey Jacobson and the Hush guys and Josh over at Montana Knife Company, and just down to the earth, salt to the earth type of people, and people with the same passions that I have. We're all cut from the same cloth, some way, shape, or form, because of our love for the outdoors and for hunting and fishing. And so I'm just I can't be happier in what we're doing. And when I started this, you know when you start a company, like, well, who do you want to be and why do you want to do it? And what I had in mind with starting Slayer was, I want to help people be successful in the outdoors. When I say outdoors, in our context, it's hunting and fishing. But I want them to experience what I've experienced. Like, it's given me so much pleasure, and I want them to experience the same thing. And, it's not always about success, like having, a deer down or an elk down or a bunch of pile of ducks that you killed. It's not always about that. But if you could just taste a little bit of success with all the time and energy and money that you put into it, it's just the icing on the cake, right? So I wanted to build super quality products that help them be more successful. And if I can do that, then I thought we could be successful as a company. And so far that's been going pretty well.
Nice. No, yeah, that's awesome. And I think that's a really good point. And it's funny. Well, it's not really funny. It's interesting to hear the origin stories of these companies like yourself, where, you share them with friends, you're doing it as a passion, and then you happen to share it with the right person that wants to help you in the long run. And that's really cool to see. One, the people that are interested in helping you grow, and so they put their portion into it to help push you to the next level. But also the fact that, again, you weren't doing it for the money, you were doing it because you really enjoyed it, and it turned your passion into something that you could turn into a company and grow and have the growth that you have. Again, having 20 employees, like, I personally can barely keep my own stuff together with myself. I can't imagine having 20 employees doing things and the ideas that go through your head with, quality control. And obviously you hired the right people, but even then, like, there's so many people that are working on the product in your company that you don't want to micromanage, but at the same time, it's hard to let go of that control, trusting these new individual that you've hired, and et cetera. That can all be a little difficult as a business owner, I imagine.
Yeah. It's very difficult. I mean, any business struggles with that, right? Just quality people doing quality things and maintaining a culture that focuses on customers and quality. That's the two things we focus on, is customers and quality. Without that, we don't have anything. So that's the top of our core values. If you don't have that, you can't be part of Slayer. But what even makes it tougher in this industry, or even narrow it more down to calls, is that to try to find folks who know how to blow a call properly, to understand the differences, those very minute differences. So trying to find folks with those core values, with that work ethic, who have intelligence, but then could also pick up a call and be intelligent about it and be able to blow it in a way that says, hey, why don't we do this? Or, that's not right, let me fix it. You know what I mean? And build it correctly. So it's very difficult to find the right people to do this Slayer thing.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, someone like myself, where I'm like, I could pick up a couple different calls and maybe make a decent cow sound and an okay bugle. I'm not going to be the one that is going to come in and make sure QC is good, because I'm not going to know the difference there. So that's awesome. And it does take a special person to be able to go through and do that. So, again, kudos to you for finding those people, but also to the team for continuing to put out such quality products and do such an awesome job with it. So let's walk through the transition here. So you started in waterfowl, which, again, I know nothing about. I just know it sounds like a fun time. Guys hanging out, You can bring the kids. You don't have to be quiet like you do with deer or elk or bigger game. And it's cold, but generally, from what I've seen anyway, if you're in a good spot, you can have some hot chocolate with you. You can just enjoy it, and then when the birds come in, then that's when things get serious, but there's a lot of downtime. So, why waterfowl? Why was that your first? Like, I know you said you started, doing the duck calls, but why is that a passion of yours, and why did you choose that over, making something else that you could have made?
Yeah, the duck calls, it was easy, right? Because I was already making them. I already had a quality product. So it was just natural for that to be our first product that we went to market with. As far as waterfowl, there is a lot of overlap between waterfowl hunting and big game hunting. You're watching the weather, you're watching the wind, you're setting up based on the wind. The way that you communicate with the animals is very similar. Movement is very, something you don't want to show a big game animal movement, nor do you want to with a flock of ducks that are coming over your head. So there's a lot of things that cross over that make it nice. But I think for somebody like yourself who hasn't done a bunch of waterfowl hunting, you kind of hit it on the nose. The difference is it's more laid back. It's more of a gentleman's sport where you're kicking back, bantering in the blind, giving each other a hard time, and all that, and eating a burrito that you put on a little hot furnace or something to warm up, cup of hot chocolate or coffee or whatever, right? But yeah, when the birds come, you get serious and everybody tunes in. So, but yeah, what got me was I was 10 years, like I did a lot of pheasant hunting with my dad. I mean, we walked miles and miles and chased those roosters around, and I loved it. But I had a buddy that took me, his family was a big duck hunting family. And when I was 10, I think I was 10 or 11, and he took me duck hunting with his family. And I was watching his two brothers call the birds in, watching them cup up and come right into exactly where they had set it up to have a landing zone and all that good stuff. And just getting up in the morning, riding across the river in the boat, getting into the blind, the camaraderie, watching those birds work, watching the brothers call those birds and work them. I don't know, man. It struck a chord in me. And from that day on, I call it a sickness because it's not even an obsession. It's like, it's just a stupid sickness. I mean, my buddies and I, we risked our lives duck hunting. Like, I don't know why parents would never do this in today's time, but my mom used to drop us off with a 12-foot aluminum boat that leaked with like a 1964 9.9 horse Honda thing on it that started like once out every 50 times. And she'd drop us off in a 50-mile-an-hour wind, pouring down rain. And we're like 3 a.m, and we're getting in that boat and we're going across big water, like 5-foot chop to get to a duck spot, 12 years old, 3 guys in a little boat, bailing water with a coffee can. And, but I mean, it's just a sickness. Like, you risk your life to do this stuff. And, from that day on, I mean, every chance I got, I was out there chasing ducks. And,
that's awesome.
Yeah. And then, my dad took me for the first time elk hunting, and, that, same thing. It struck a chord with me. And it's from that day on, I never stopped chasing elk. Like, it's a sickness, and like the amount of money and time and thought that I've put into those things is ridiculous. Like, people are like, oh, I want to get into duck hunting. I'm like, okay, well, buy a $25,000 duck boat, buy a $2,000 dog, put $3,000 of training into it, buy $3,000 worth of decoys, and then ammo and guns, and right. It's like, you don't need all that to get started, but it's like, if the sickness gets you, you'll be there before long.
Yeah. Yeah, and the thing is, like, and the other big reason for me personally why I haven't really gotten into waterfowl or anything, I'll do turkeys. I don't do it passionately, but kind of more of an opportunistic turkey hunter. If there's an opportunity, I'll go for it. But I don't plan my year around it, or get super stoked for spring because it's turkey season.
Yeah.
And the big reason for me is the ROI, basically, of turkeys or birds, in general. Like what you were saying, is it's not cheap. And honestly, I don't know a ton of people that absolutely love duck meat or Turkey meat's pretty good, but you still don't get a lot for how much effort you put into hunting
Yeah.
turkeys,
Yeah.
and the people that do love duck meat have a very particular way of cooking it every single time, and it has to be certain types of duck. It can't be every single duck. And so for all those reasons, I haven't quite gotten into it yet. Is it just a passion at this point? Like you were saying, is it a sickness, or do you keep the ducks and cook them and enjoy the meat?
I'm big on that. I'm not like my dad was always big on the fact that you kill something, you eat it. So if I went out back with my BB gun and I killed a blue jay, I was eating the blue jay, right? It's like we never killed just for the pleasure of killing. And so, if we're going to kill something, we're going to eat it. So I don't kill divers. I bring people out and divers will go by. I'm like, oh, divers. And they're like, why aren't you shooting them? I'm like, because I don't eat them. And it's like, and so, I'm specific about the ducks I kill because there's some ducks I don't care to eat and some ducks I do like to eat. So, but mostly what we do is usually our ducks are jerky for the elk season. So, and then for following duck season, so the ducks I killed last year, I'll get them ground up with a little bit of pork or whatever and get spiced up. We make the jerky sticks out of them. And then what happens with that is we eat them throughout the year, whether we go camping or whatever, fishing. Elk season, they're always a big pack in my backpack. And then during duck season, we're eating last year's ducks. And then we stock up that year. And then we all put our ducks together and then we go grind them up and divvy them out. And that's our beef jerky for the following year. So,
gotcha.
And then
okay, cool. So
so
you do a lot of jerky with your ducks. Now, I don't think I've ever had duck jerky. Is there a particular seasoning? Like, are you a teriyaki guy? Or are you a peppered guy? Like, how do you like to season it up? And then you grind it first.
I'm a hot and spicy kind of guy. I like sweet and spicy. So I take mine to a meat guy down here. I don't, it's just I don't have the time to sit around and make jerky. I mean, my buddies and we do it. And we're like, you know what? For the cost, I'm just going to take mine. And he has his own special blend that it's kind of like a sweet, spicy type sauce, and then he mix in like 10% pork in it. And I mean, if you're eating it, you may taste like a hint of gamey, ducky taste that people talk about. But I've grown to like it, and it's good.
I would say, jerky's jerky at that point. So you pretty much do all your ducks in jerky, or do you do it? Do you do a mix where you cook some of it outside of jerky?
I'll keep some out and I'll pluck them, and then I'll when I cook them, I like the skin on them instead of just breasting them out for jerky. But I'll keep a certain handful of ducks out, and and I just pan sear them. I eat them medium rare. And I'll eat them over some wild rice with a sweet basting sauce over the top of it, just garlic, salt, and pepper, and they're good. It's not something I'm going to eat once a week, but once a month I'll eat them like that.
And do you cook it medium rare?
Yeah, duck. I mean, I think we all have that thing. Like if there's what looks to be blood coming out of it, it's like, oh my God, how are you eating raw duck? But it has to be medium rare, or else it gets very liver tasting, or like almost like you're eating a piece of shoe or leather,
Yeah.
But I mean, it would almost gross you out if you saw how rare I eat duck. So.
Yeah. Well, that's when you have a good conversation while you're eating. You don't look at what you're eating. You're just put it in your mouth and just chew and talk. No, but that's awesome. So that sounds about right. So, I mean, I don't know, maybe I would get the bug if I tried it out, but, I might go on one or two hunts here in the future, but, I could see myself doing more of the jerky route where it just becomes jerky. And, we've got a good meat guy, cause that's a whole nother job in and of itself, is grinding the meat or processing it or whatever. I've done it a couple times and I'm like, that's a lot of work. So, so great. You started with waterfowl. You've got some great waterfowl calls. And then just because obviously you've been doing that for even longer than you've been doing the big game and predator calls. So then you went from the waterfowl calls to what was your first? Was it big game? Was it predator? Was it goose? Like what did you move into next?
Yeah, no, we did duck, then we did goose, and then we went into elk. And so elk's another passion of mine. Started bow hunting. I always say 15 years, but years go by fast. It's probably more like 20 years I've been bow hunting. And when I caught that bug, you know, I was a rifle hunter with my dad, and then I took my youngest daughter out bow hunting. She was watching Hunger Games, and she wanted to be like the girl on there with a bow. I was like, hey, I want to go hunting with a bow. And I'm like, what are you talking about? You never talked about wanting to go hunting before. And I called in a big 6x6 for her that she, you know, she was young. I think she was 12 or 13 at the time. And she missed it at 21 yards, and then right after that called in a big long spike. And she didn't get an opportunity on that. But when that happened, how it all happened, it was just like that when I was 10 years old and that cord got struck in me, you know, calling in a bugling bull that's just screaming, you know, it's sitting there at 20 yards. I was just like, holy cow, I was all in. And so, you know, making the duck calls, I was like, we can make elk calls. Like, why not? You know? And so I started with a tube, just a basic, you know, baseball bat tube. And there's not, you know, a bunch of differences in tubes out there. But you know, with Slayer 2, I think innovation. So when you talk about our core values and what we're doing, customer comes first, quality is right there with customer, and then it's innovation. Like, what can we do that's different than the industry's doing? You know, I come from 22 years of software during the .com. You know, I saw no cell phones to the cell phone we have today. I saw no computers to the computers we have today. I've seen, you know, and I'm kind of aging myself, but I saw dial-up internet to the internet we have today. I saw, you know, client server computing to cloud computing that we have today. And I saw how fast it moved. I worked for all those companies that were involved in that. And I'm like, and I look at the hunting space, and I think hunting space, you know, it's tough, right? Because the hunting space, you kind of want it to be, you want to keep out all the outside noise and the technology and what's going on in the world. It's one of the reasons why we do it. And you want to keep it, you know, you want to keep the history of it. But in my mind, I'm like, well, a lot of these products could be a lot better. You know, if you just brought some technology, you brought some forward thinking and some innovation to this stuff. I'm not saying companies aren't doing that, but like with nutrition, right? Like what First Phorm's doing and what Montana Knife Company is doing with their knives with different types of stills and different type of techniques. Like, bring some technology and some innovation to the industry that will help hunters. And so, you know, when I say innovation to our core values, what it translates to us is customers, quality, and success in the field would be our top 3 core values, right? So if we can bring innovation to our products and help people be more successful, what's that going to do? That's going to keep them in the game longer, and it's going to help our wildlife. It's going to help the wild lands that we're hunting, and it's going to keep more people hunting, right? And so that's what success means to me is preserving the sport of hunting. And so on the elk side, I'm looking at these reeds that have been the same way for 30 years. I'm looking at these tubes that have been the same way for 30 years. Like, what can we do that's different? And so on our frames, we can completely redesign the frame. So if you look at our elk reeds, they look exactly like everybody else's, but the way the frame is built underneath that tape is completely different.
Oh, let's see if I can get the camera here.
Yeah, right there.
To focus.
Yeah, there you go. So if you look at it like that, you're like, there's no difference, right? It has a dome, it has a metal frame, and some tape with a logo on it. But what we've done is we've inverted some bevels so that we have more contact with the latex. Some of the things that we're hearing in the industry is, you know, I buy a reed and it's not the same as the one I bought yesterday. There's no consistency. You know, if I buy the black reed with the clear tape from this company, it may not sound the exact same as the one I bought, you know, last year or 10 days ago. And then more importantly, people are talking about, I use it for a day and then it's no good. I have to pop another one in my mouth, and it's like I have to buy 15 reeds to get through the season. So I was like, okay, well, what can we do different to make them more consistent and to last longer? And so we redesigned that frame so that you'll get consistency. First of all, we'll have the right people making them to make them consistent. We'll give them a frame that could allow them to be consistent and allow the reed to last longer. We got people who used it one reed all last season and still blowing it today, and they're like, man, this thing still runs. Like we would never guarantee it to last that long, but we're getting one reed to last the entire season. So, and with that, you're going to get quality sound, and you get with the reed, and so that's always going to be part of Slayer. Is not only is it going to last longer, you're going to get consistency, but you're going to have quality.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's and I love the idea of the fact that you're not. I mean, obviously you're aiming to grow, but that's not your main goal. Is to just again, how much money can I make off of this? It's you genuinely are keeping it innovative and updating things, taking feedback from customers, which that's a huge deal in the outdoors industry, which may seem like such a big industry. It's really not. Behind the scenes, everyone seems to know everybody, and is in touch. And the fact that you're looking to innovate consistently, that's a big deal. So I love the quality of the calls. Now, again, I'm no expert, and I'm fairly new to elk hunting, just over the last couple of years, less than 5 years, which you're saying you've been on it for almost 20 years. So, you've got a lot more experience, and I could tell a difference. I'm getting to the point where I can tell the difference between a human, even a good human, and an elk. But at the same time, I'm not going to be able to tell you that there's a slight difference in the call from today versus tomorrow. But I can say that I have noticed over a season, previous calls that I've used, that they stretch versus the same amount of use on your calls don't seem to have that same amount of stretch, and they seem to be able to continue to hold that tone that I'm looking for whenever I do my bugling or cow calls. So I can say that they're definitely quality. I do want to talk about, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and we'll continue to iterate. That reed that you have there is V2. We're working on a V3. So we're not, a lot of companies will just stop where they're at. We're like, shoot, we got a quality product. This thing kicks ass. Like this is our product. And they kind of stop there. Well, it costs a lot of money to do R&D and to create new tooling for all this. It'd be easy for me to say, let's just stop here and just kind of reap the benefits of it. But we're not. We're already working on V3 of it. There's a thing that we're doing that is even going to make the reeds better. And it's going to allow us to do a lot of other things. So we're always thinking a year or two ahead and what could benefit the hunter. And so, we're not done yet. We're gonna keep going. And for me, and I didn't, sometimes you don't know, like you have hidden talents, and people keep telling me this. I'm like, no, I don't, but they're like, Bill, like, you're really good at like figuring shit out and building things differently. And I actually have a ton of fun doing it. Like, and then they're like, why are you like that? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I just enjoy it. Why do you enjoy it? But I go back to my childhood, and you might, a lot of kids might have been this way, but I used to take my bike apart every single day, like take it apart. I always wanted to know how it worked. So I would take the cranks out. I would take the crank bearings out. I would take the rear sprocket off. I would look in the bearings. I would do, and I take the forks off, look at the bearings and how all that went together. And then, my mom would buy me a remote control car for Christmas or something. And then I'd play with it for like 3 days and I'd tear it all down.
Brief interruption, real quick. Want to remind you that Slayer is offering you a discount with the code down below. It helps support me here at the show, helps continue to bring guests on like Bill from Slayer, but also will get you a discount as you're looking to get the game calls that you need, whether they be elk calls, whether they be the Enchantress, which is an awesome design. I've gone over that if you want to go back and look at that video on the channel. Also, Bill is going to go over it today in this episode, so that if you are not good with mouth reeds, this is an option for you. And also, they make amazing bugle tubes. They make great duck calls, which is obviously where he started, and other calls as well. So go check out Slayer. Get the discount down below. Also, guys, let me just reiterate, if you're watching this in June, get in on this over $2,000 worth of archery equipment giveaway. It's amazing. It's the biggest giveaway yet that I've done. Got to go check it out, guys. Get entered. The link is down below. Really appreciate that. Now let's get back to this conversation with Bill.
And I put it back together. I tear it down and I put it back together. You know, and I look at the circuit board and like, what's these resistors and transistors? And I kind of geek out on like the circuit board and how it made this thing run. And then as I got older, I was tearing duck calls apart, you know, and I'd look at them and I'd sand here, I'd cut here, and I broke everything. Like I was always breaking. My mom said, "Oh, if I buy this, don't tear it apart and break it. You know, it's expensive." You know, my skis, I'd tear the bindings off and start geeking out on those things. And so I think the way I've learned to do this is just by reverse engineering, right? Like I'm so intrigued at how stuff works that, and then you start thinking, well, how can I make it better? Once you understand how it works, then you're like, oh, that's how it works. Maybe I could do it this way and make it better. You know, and that's the part I really, really enjoy about this job is, you know, if I could just not do all the finance and stuff that comes with business and just focus on innovation, I'd be a happy cat.
Yep. No, I hear you on that. That's awesome. And no, I wasn't like that as a kid. Definitely not. But I do have some children that are that way. And it frustrates me because I'm like what your mom was saying, you know, hey, I just bought that. Don't break it. And I walk out and of course, you know, stuff's torn apart and I'm just like, all right. You just kind of take a deep breath and realize it just comes with the territory. But
let them do it. They're working aside of their brain that society doesn't allow them to mess with anymore. So.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what, you know, it's frustrating on one end, but on the other end, it makes me happy to see him do that. You know, I've got a kid that he is 17 now and they just won. What was it? So he does coding and he doesn't do the coding where you tell your parents you're coding, but you're just playing video games. Like he actually has built a couple different computers. He's at what's called the Catalyst Center here in Utah, where it's like almost like a technical college for high schoolers. And so he goes off campus a couple times a week and works with kids that are older than him. And they built a video game, and he actually had me kind of run through and play it a little bit and give him some feedback on someone that doesn't play video games, you know. Yeah. And they presented it at the esports conference that they had just recently here in Utah, and he and his team won first place in their category out of the entire state. And so like he's one of those kids that tears things apart, and you know, every once in a while I'll smell something burning from downstairs and he's using his little soldering iron. I'm like, whoa, just keep that off the carpet, you know, like but he's an awesome kid, and so I love seeing his brain work, and he may not have the straight A's that, you know, a typical parent would want, but he's crushing it when it comes to technical knowledge and life stuff. So I absolutely love that.
And that was me. Like I spent more time in the garage tinkering around with stuff. And, you know, and I also was like, I grew up, my mom would drop me off at my uncle's shoe shop and I'd spend the day with him watching him work on shoes, and he'd give me a sole and, you know, I'd tear the laces, you know, the stitching out of the sole so he could replace the sole, and he'd give me little jobs to do and glue this, you know, unstitch that and sort these shoes, right? So I was always kind of messing around in his shop. And then my dad, you know, we grew up pretty poor, and he had an old Ford 150, and it was every weekend we were underneath the truck, you know, fixing something. And so he'd like, you know, I was the tool guy, right? Like, hey, go get me a 3/8 socket, or go get me a monkey wrench or whatever, right? And so I was running back and forth, but I'd watch him, you know, replace the transmission or, you know, something on the truck or water pump. And so I got to see, and then you know, I'd sit under there and, wow, how does that work? How does that go on there? You know, and kind of geek out on that. And so I was fortunate enough to grow up where, you know, I was part of that, you know, and so I spent a lot of time in the garage just tooling around. My buddy Wade and I, we made so many goat carts and like just, you know, total janky things, and we would race them down dirt hills and crash, and they fall apart. And we'd somehow link two skateboards together and go down a big hill on them. Like, we were always building stuff and just tearing things up.
Yeah.
But so
Yeah,
I'd
that's
love
awesome.
to hear the story about your son, like soldering things and just doing stuff with his hands.
Oh yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's really cool to see. And then, just getting out, even just little things like whittling. My son I was working on something out in the garage, and he was like, "Dad, like, I know the rule. You have to watch me. Can you watch me while I'm whittling?" I was like, "Sure. What are you going to make?" He was like, I just want to whittle a stick into a sharp stick." I said, "Okay," whatever,
Okay,
and,
so
yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm like, you stay right over there so I can, watch you. And the worst he's going to do is maybe nick his finger or something, not a big deal. But, yeah, I definitely try and encourage that, with the kids. And, there's some education they're going to learn at school, but also just that, stuff that they can learn at home. I try and keep them off the screens and get them outside and using their hands and creativity. Legos. We have more Legos. We probably got more Legos than the Lego store at this point downstairs. Nerf guns, stuff like that is what
yeah.
we kind of encourage. It's frustrating to clean up and it sucks to step on, but they they get to have a lot of fun that way. So with that. So we moved into, the elk calls, the mouth reeds that we just showed some of those right there. What's the difference between, so let's see, I've got a couple different colors here, actually quite a few. So what I ended up getting was the altitude pack.
Yep.
And so it's got a bunch of different colors in here. We've got pink, we've got white, we've got red, we've got blue, and we've got black, and we have a gray one. So what is the big, like, if someone wants just a call that if they're basic like me and they're like, hey, I just need something for some cow calls, maybe some calf sounding calls, and then a general bugle, that, again, like me, they're not really going to notice the difference in the tone. What would you recommend that they look for as far as colors go?
Yeah. So I'll kind of tell you how the calls were built, and then I'll answer your question if that's okay.
Okay.
So the Joe McCarthy and Cody McCarthy were the two leads on this. I mean, Cody McCarthy was 2021 World Championship elk caller.
Mm-hmm.
He won the pros division. His dad, he took fourth the year before last. So they're both very, very good on an elk call. Cody is a barrel chested, big, strong kid, ex-football player. And he has tremendous amount of air pressure. Like, the amount of diaphragm air that guy can generate is unbelievable. There's duck calls that I can't even come close to overblowing. He picks it up without even trying. He overblows them. Right. I'm 6'4", 250 pounds, but I just don't have that lung capacity or that diaphragm air like some people do. And then there's some folks that have very little diaphragm air or have very low lung capacity.
Mm.
And so when they designed the calls, we built 7 calls, and what we wanted to do is build a call for everybody. We wanted to build a call for somebody that has never blown an elk call before and is trying to learn. We wanted to build an elk call for somebody that has very low air pressure and uses very little tongue pressure. We wanted to build kind of medium, middle of the row, for those people that are average. And then we wanted to build calls for folks that have a tremendous amount of lung capacity and tremendous amount of tongue pressure. So as you go up to scale, that's what you're getting. So if you think of X and Y axis, as you go up the scale of calls, it's more tongue pressure, more air pressure.
Okay.
So the pink call, the Isabella, that call there would be a call that you just breathe on it. It's going to produce a sound. Right. It's a 3000 latex with a very low stretch. And so you just breathe on it and it's going to make sound. So it's going to be a very good trainer for somebody that, is trying to learn to use an elk reed.
Okay.
So and then you put some tongue pressure on it, you put a little more air pressure on it. It's going to make very good cow sounds and very low bugles. And so what you get as you go up that scale, you're not going to get a real loud call. It's going to be more soft and subtle, more finesse, right? And so Joe built it as a trainer, But what we're finding, it's a great call. So say if you're the shooter, the caller's behind you, you have the Isabella in your mouth, you're at full draw, and that bull comes out and it's walking, you want to stop it. You don't even have to think about making a cow sound. You just, yeah, and it just makes a sound, and you can just, it allows you to be the shooter and not have to think about what's in your mouth and what kind of call you're going to make. Okay. So, and then also, Joe's finding out, like, if you're hunting by yourself and you got a bull that's in close and you don't want to be super loud and give away your position, you could make very, very soft, faint noises with that and still sound accurate. And so not giving away your exact location. So hunting by yourself is super tough because you get them within 60, 70 yards. And then you try to maneuver and make a sound. They know the tree that you're sitting on. Mm-hmm. And then they get at that 60, 80 yards and they're sitting there looking at that tree. And if they're not smelling you or seeing you, they're like, nah, something's fishy here. And they walk off, right? So an Isabella could be a good call to try to be super soft with and not give up your location and call close in. It does a lot of moans and low finesse type sounds. And then as you work up this scale, you're getting into thicker latexes, tighter stretches, which needs more air pressure, more tongue pressure to operate and get sound out of. And then, the dark blue call. Do you have a dark blue one there?
Yes.
Yeah. So the dark blue call, that is a 6,000th latex with a pretty good stretch on it. And so what's, that to some people might feel like a piece of cardboard in your mouth as far as the latex goes. That takes a tremendous amount of air pressure and tongue pressure to get to operate. So that call is going to be very loud. It's going to be very responsive. Yeah, that blue call. And it's going to have a lot of bass and a lot of bounce to it because of the thick latex and the stretch. It's going to have a lot of quick response time. It's going to come back to neutral. So it's going to boom, boom, boom. So you get a lot of bass and a lot of bounce to it. So, and it's going to be really loud if you can operate it. But that call's not for everybody.
Is that more on so do you say those are the two ends of the spectrum there, the pink and the dark blue?
Two ends of the spectrum. So Isabella is at the bottom of that, and then that dark blue is at the very top. And so if you're looking, so now answer your question, the logger, the miner, so the red call, the black call, the maniac, that white call with the blue tape. Yeah, that's a very, that's like right above the Isabella, but it's a solid. Okay. That's my favorite call, because I could do everything with it. That black call is now moving. The red call is that black call is a 4,000th latex. The one you had before that is a 3,000th latex with a slightly tighter stretch than the Isabella. And then that red call, to answer your question, I'd probably, for you being a little newer, looking for middle of the road, that red call would be a really good one for you.
Cool. So from the ones that I have, just kind of going up the spectrum there for people that do know. So that's a good starting point, is the pink and the red for people that are newer to calling, don't know a ton about their pressure that they can put out as far as their lung pressure and their the pressure they're putting out with their mouth. So it would go pink, red, and then black is the next step up.
Black.
Dark blue is the highest. So where do these three fall? So I've got the white, the gray, and the light blue.
Then it goes the white.
Okay.
And then the gray, then the light blue.
Okay. Perfect.
Yep.
So then it's pink, just to recap for people that are looking at this. And like I said, I'll do a review on this and break it down as well. But it's pink, red, black, white, gray, light blue, dark blue, as far as the pressure required to get it out, get the sound out. Obviously, with more pressure, you're able to get a deeper sound. It'll travel a lot better. You'll be able to get a better, I can't even say better because it depends on the scenario, but that deeper, more powerful sound, the higher up the spectrum you can go.
Yep, that's exactly right. And on our website, slayercalls.com, if you go to reads, we have a chart that shows everything and gives a description on each of them. Cool. So and it shows that XY access and how they translate to that. But Yeah, I mean, you're pretty much spot on. If you want louder, more aggressive calls, you kind of go up that scale. You know, Cody will compete this year with that gray call. That will be his competition call. He can do everything with it. You know, he's special, right? He's you know, top 1% when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
calling. He's right up in the ballpark with everybody else in that super competitive range. But
Right.
he can do everything with it. He can get soft and quiet. He can get loud and, you know, sound like a huge raging bull. He can get a lot of bass out of that thing. So that was his call he designed for his competition calling. So
Sweet. Okay.
yeah,
No, that's awesome. It's cool, on both ends to see someone like yourself that loves to break things down, be innovative, create, but also you trust people like Cody and his dad that use the calls, have been hunting elk for their entire lives, and they've been calling in competition. So, and that's also different things too, like calling in competition versus calling in the woods is a different thing too. So, like, just having a competition caller, you also need to understand there's a difference. And again, I'm not the expert, but I know enough to know there's a difference between a human listening, because that's what you're doing in competition. You've got some acoustics that are different than when you're out in the woods, and you've got people listening to you rather than elk. Versus when you're in the woods, depending on where you're at, some of the thick, nasty North Idaho stuff that you may deal with is going to be a lot different than if you're in the open country and how you
yeah,
want to call. You also want to try and mimic whatever the elk are calling, how they're calling, because if you come in and you're some strange dude, coming in and you start calling all random and weird, that could shut them up just as quick as
yeah,
being too aggressive. So there's a lot of stuff and nuances to the calling, but it's good to have that spectrum. And like I said, I'll make sure to put that out there. I know you explain it well on the site, but it's also a good resource for people to come back to and have a quick, like, I'm new, these are where I need to go, and that's it. They don't necessarily want to go hear a breakdown of everything, like, from a
yeah,
competitive caller that will get into the nuances of this is this thousandths of stretch, because that, to me, that's Chinese, to be honest with you. Like,
yeah,
for me, I'm
yeah,
like, just tell me which one to put in my mouth and I'll use it, right?
yeah,
But at the same time, other people may appreciate the fact that you're so open and and just explain how you guys go through the process of different thicknesses of latex and which one's going to do what. That's pretty cool. I definitely appreciate that as well. So
yeah. Yeah, hunting with Joe could be frustrating because, you know, we call it his pocket of Skittles. You know, he has like 25 reeds in there. And you're exactly right. Like, you know, if we're hunting open country or a spot where we need to get the bugle to travel, he reaches in his pocket and he's got, you know, and he's sitting there sifting through his Skittles and he pulls out, you know, the dark blue reed and he lets one rip, right? And then if we're in real tight cover and we got a bull fairly close, he's in his pocket again, you know, and he's pulling out the Isabella. But you're right, like, you know, every situation is different in the way that you want to call these elk and
mm-hmm.
how to present it to you. The country that you're hunting, the way the elk are communicating, where the elk are at compared to where you're at. So
Yep.
you kind of need a variety of calls to pick your situation.
Exactly. Cool. So we went over the mouth calls. Let's go over briefly here the different tubes, because I've got two different tubes here. One of them's got a mouthpiece on it that make it simpler to do your calls, and then you've got this one, which is the acrylic mouthpiece. Remind me, what's the name of this one?
This is the Archangel.
Okay, so the Archangel. So you guys can see here, this piece is different material than this. It's not your baseball bat material. This is the acrylic mouthpiece here. So what makes this stand out and different compared to, I mean, again, you're in a market that's pretty saturated. There's some well-established norms in the market. This is new compared to other mouthpieces. So why this material and what makes this different?
Yeah, so it's not easy to explain, but I can give you the thought process behind it, and you can tell me whether it makes sense or not. But
Okay.
so what we did is we took waterfowl technology and put it into elk.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is, you know, with duck calls, you have acrylic. It's
Mm-hmm.
been used probably the last 50, 60 years. The reason for that is because it's acoustical ability to produce sounds.
Okay.
It just has been proven to throw sound in a way that's different than any other material that's on the market. Now, I have dowel ring duck calls, I have plastic duck calls, but when you blow this exact same reed through those materials, they sound much different. Or I got wood duck calls too, right? And that produces different tones and different sounds based on materials. So acrylic's been a proven material to produce really good acoustical sounds when calling ducks or geese. And then the second thing is duck calls and goose calls are they all work off of back pressure. So we have a reed in our mouth and we're blowing through a tube. No different than a reed inside of a duck call blowing through a tube. Exact same thing. It's just you're producing different tones and different sounds based on the animal that you're calling. So all the tubes that you look at today have, an inch round, inch and a quarter, inch and a third diameter hole that you're blowing through. There's zero back pressure. And you're blowing into plastic, very thin-walled plastic, which is not a great acoustical material to produce those sounds. So in my head, I was like, why don't we create back pressure? And why don't we put acrylic in there that's going to allow those sound waves to produce better tones? And so that was the whole idea behind the acrylic mouthpiece. Now that mouthpiece is a 1/2 inch diameter hole. So now instead of blowing through a 1 inch hole, you're blowing through a 1/2 inch hole, which is creating back pressure. You're like, well, why do you need back pressure for an elk call? Well, you're using a mouth reed, right? So the only way I can demonstrate it is if you take a big breath of air and you blow through a 1 inch hole, you dump your air out really fast. And when back pressure is holding your air back, so you just don't dump it out in one big breath. So you blow through a straw, you get a lot longer breath. So that allows you to not have to you have to concentrate on your air and your breath and then what you're doing with your tongue and your reed a lot more in a big diameter hole than you do with back pressure. Now I could utilize much more of my air and I can control my reed much better. And
Gotcha.
as it goes through that small hole, the sound waves shorten, right? And then when they go into the baffle, they come out with more force. So you don't have to use as much pressure to create more speed of those sound waves going through that small hole. And when they come out, they hit that baffle and it's giving you big, deep, bassy, loud sounds. And you're only using half the breath that you normally would use on a big hole because you got that back pressure. And then the acrylic producing better sounds because it's not absorbing into the plastic or you're not losing it out the walls of the thin plastic. It's staying in there, staying true to its tone. And then when it comes out and hits that baffle, you're getting more speed and more force with it. And it's helping you utilize your reed and your breath better. And you don't have to focus on it so much. It makes it easier to use your reed.
Gotcha.
So,
no, perfect.
I don't know if all that makes sense.
That makes sense.
That's the thought process behind it.
And I mean, is it similar to so if you have a certain material for insulation, for example, you're not able to keep the heat in as much as if you have other material for that same insulation, correct? So it's similar to sound where, this stuff will hold that sound and allow it to travel through a lot quicker, a lot, I guess not quicker, but will hold the sound similar to holding heat a lot better out of this mouthpiece versus, something that's that thin walled plastic, like what you were mentioning. So that all makes sense to me.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was a thought process. And any type you're designing, any research development stage, I have so many things that just didn't pan out that, I could show you things on my shelf here that it was a great idea, but it just didn't work out. Right. And so 9 out of 10 times they don't work out. And so when we built this, we were like, wow, it sounds like a great theory, but until we test it, we don't know. And then sure enough, we built it and we're blown through like, holy cow, like all those things are true,
Yeah.
And to the average person might be like, oh, it doesn't sound a ton different to me. But, to an elk or to somebody that knows, like when you're saying the difference between a human and an elk in the woods and knowing the difference, like when Joe and Cody are blown in the woods and I'm off, maybe doing something else, and I'm 100 yards away and they got a bull going, I'm not sure which one's the real bull and which one's those guys,
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then, so I do want to break this down because this is pretty new. The Enchantress. So we've got, we went over the regular tube, the Archangel. We went over some of the mouth reeds, which is kind of the essentials, the starter kit. Do you guys have a external reed for cow calling?
Yeah. Yeah, we have a cow
perfect.
and calf external reed also.
Okay, awesome. So for people that want the external reed sound, because that's another thing too. Again, people that are way better at elk hunting than I am, and have been calling a lot longer than I have, also explain that it's good to mix it up sometimes. Most people prefer mouth reeds, but if that's not working, maybe dropping in an external call every once in a while will get a different reaction out of the animals that are in the area, because just the tones hit a little bit different. And it might be something that maybe they're more used to or more reactive to. So that's always an option. But so we went over mouth reeds. You've got external cow call. You've got the Archangel with the different mouthpiece, the acrylic mouthpiece. And then you have the Enchantress. So this is another tube. And this one is the plastic here, but there's a special mouthpiece on it with a button. And I screwed it on. Let me see if I can pop it off here just for the sake of showing it. So this is the normal, thin plastic tube that you guys have. It comes with this mouthpiece. So inside the mouthpiece, I don't know if the light will show it well enough, but there's a reed in there. You can kind of see it a little bit. But walk us through this, because it's pretty simple to install. You can have, if you just want to carry one tube, you got your normal tube. You can bugle out of this, use this mouthpiece. Not as good as the acrylic one, but it's still a good mouthpiece, good bugle tube. And then you can slap this baby on here, and it's pretty simple to install. So walk us through what this is for people that may be interested in this.
Yep. So I'll kind of give you the inspiration behind this, or why we created it. So I don't know if you can see that. The elk reeds there. So if you look at get this right. So all we did is we took the frame out of the tape and we put it right there.
Okay. From the pink one?
No, it's a special one for the Enchantress. So gotcha. It's kind of a middle of the road. It's a 3000s latex with a pretty tight stretch on it. So we took the reed out of the mouth. So the inspiration behind this, or the reason for it is, after a couple of years of working shows and selling reeds and tubes, I would say 8 out of 10 people that came up to our booth would come up and be like, I can't use mouth reeds. I have a gag reflex. I put those things in my mouth and I pretty much want to puke. Or, hey, I had a guy in Oregon last year. He's like, hey, I'm an elk guide. I'm really good at calling elk with reeds, but I got kicked in the mouth by my horse and lost my front teeth. Shoot. And now when I try to blow a mouth reed, my teeth come out.
Did you tell him to just put a stretch of latex right there so you just...
There you go. I probably would one. But right. And so for I don't, there's a million reasons why folks can't use mouth reeds, or, hey, I've just tried that and I just can't do it. Like, it's just, it doesn't work. Like, I'm done trying. I've spent so much money on reeds and trying to figure it out. And so in my head, I'm like, well, shoot, there's got to be a way to build something that can make cow calls, calf calls, estrus buzz, bugle, lip ball bugle. I mean, it can't be that hard. We should be able to figure something out here. And, there's the external bite calls, or calls that you can make some sounds with. There's the hoochie mama out there. But in my mind, they make external cow calls. They make decent cow calls, but they're not very versatile. And then I'm like, well, then how do you bugle? So when I first started, I used some some products that were okay, that didn't require a mouth reed, but nothing that sounded great or lasted very long. You know, there's calls out there that are like this, where you kind of have to get your lip just right on it. You have to have just enough moisture on it.
Yeah.
And then
It's
you
almost
kind of
like
get,
playing a woodwind instrument or something.
yeah, yeah. And, and it was kind of clumsy, and I didn't think the sound was that great. So we built the Enchantress. And so what's great about this call is it cow calls, calf calls. You could estrus buzz in it. Like, you just put it on your bugle tube, you can bugle with it. It's a super loud bugle. Like, if you want to do a location bugle on it, it's probably louder than anything on the market. Great call for locating bulls. And then you can lip ball into it. And what's great about it is, you know, it's just like a bugle tube. We've shrunk down, we've created back pressure in it. So you can lip ball into it, and you can change your cow calls. So you can do very faint, light cow calls, calf calls. You can do pleading cow calls. You can do pleading calf calls. You could estrus buzz in it. And then you put it on your bugle tube. You could do location bugles. You can do little growls with it. You can lip ball with it and sound like a big old bull. You know, it's all worked up. This product, I mean, and when we built it, we were like, okay, well, some people will buy it. Well, last year, we forecasted to sell more than I thought we'd be able to sell. I mean, I was like, you know, if we don't sell this, like, we're going to have a cash flow problem. And we couldn't keep them in stock. I was like, holy cow. So I was like, you know, we were staying up late. We're having assembly parties, trying to keep this product. We go out of stock. We do back orders. And this happened through the entire month of October and September. And so this year we scaled, you know, operations up, and we have what we forecasted to sell is a stupid number. And I have a feeling we're going to run out again. Like, it's crazy. And then what we're finding is it's not only for people who can't use a mouth reed. It goes back to what you were saying, is it's a product where you can sound like multiple elk in a herd. So, you know, if you're good with a mouth reed, that's great. It's more, you can probably get a wider range of sounds from it. And probably, if you're really good with it, get a better quality sound. But I mean, I'm telling you, like, I used this the year before last. We called in 7 bulls. We killed 4 of them. None of them were monsters, but they were all, you know, decent elk. But I solely used this 2 years ago just because I had to have confidence in it.
Right.
You know, if we're going to sell it and I'm going to talk about it, I need to be confident in it. And I was locating bulls. Like, if you just do this and do a loud cow call, I get bulls on top of ridges a quarter mile away to respond. I mean, it works. It works awesome. So as you can tell, I'm pretty fired up about it. And again, and the reason I'm fired up, like, I can care less about the money part of it and how many we sell or any of that garbage. Why I care about it is because, I mean, last year we probably got 300-400 photos sent in of dead bulls with the Enchantress.
Wow.
And a lot of those were photos saying, hey, I just want to thank you for creating this product. My son called this bull in and I was able to kill it. And it made his life. So like, cool. It made his year, right? Or I have a guy, he's actually a big time outfitter here in Idaho. He brought his girlfriend out, and she called in a bull for him. He's like, you know what? I was thinking that, you know, that would never happen. And he's like, I didn't care about calling the bull or killing the bull myself. He goes, I just, the fact that my girlfriend was able to call it in for me and put it on the ground, and she saw the result of her what she did, you know. So we got a ton of stories like that. And so, you know, going back to it, what makes me happy about this product is it's allowing people to be successful in the field that in the past have never been able to get a response from a bull. Like, just a little kid, like, sitting up on a ridge and bugling down into a canyon with the Enchantress and hearing a bull bugle back at him. He's 10 years old. You want to talk about, like, striking a chord and getting the sickness? Like, that's what I want. That's right there is what I want people to experience, because that kid, he's going to be hooked, right? And he's going to be out there chasing and having the dreams and doing what we're doing for the rest of his life and teaching his kids and his grandkids, right? And so if this product allows that to happen, we've done something right, you know. And that's what fires me up about it. And that's why I'm like you got to, if you struggle with a mouth rig, I'm telling you right now, there's nothing, we got a patent on it. There's nothing on the market like it. It will get people involved and it will create success. And, let's be realistic. If you can get a bull to respond your first year elk hunting as a kid and even get it to come in within 80 yards and it walks away, pushes the cows off, that's a success. That will get you going. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
So
I couldn't agree with you more. It's and I guess I haven't messed around with it enough, but people just carry it around like this. You don't need the tube. So
yeah.
when you hold it, I mean, you've got the logo set up like this. So do you keep the button on the bottom when you use it?
Yeah,
Okay.
everybody wants to, a lot of people, they want to like crush it like this or use this finger. I found the best way to operate this call is using the bottom third, so away from your mouth, bottom third, and using your thumb. So when I blow the call, it's just like that. Yep. And
Cool.
using the point of your finger, not the flat of your finger. Because what you're trying to do is, I can give you a little show, I could show you here. So when you're pushing that button, you want to push on the lower part of the latex, not the upper part of it. So when you're pushing that button, you want to be pushing just like that.
Gotcha.
So,
sweet. Yeah, I'm gonna have to get out and mess around with this weekend and have my son mess around with it too. Because mouth reeds can be rough for kids, and the fact that you're able to have this piece right here, weighs nothing, super lightweight. It's very obviously versatile. You can, like you said, throw it, unscrew that little piece, slap it on your bugle tube, screw it on, and it's tight. And it's durable. I wouldn't go beating a tree with it and trying to rake with it, but it's a durable product, and you can tell it's just well built. So that's awesome. And I also know you guys have a video up, so if people do use this a ton, on how to swap out the internals to keep it keeping the same sound. So you guys have a lot of options there with this, and that's really cool. Definitely recommended for new people that are into calls, people that can't handle the mouth call. Maybe they got a bad gag reflex, or their palate maybe is a little too small. That happens sometimes as well, where you can't find one that quite fits. Maybe you have a little bit too much air leakage, whatever. You don't want that to be the reason why you don't go elk hunting or don't enjoy it because you can't figure out the right call. So this is definitely a great option for that. That's pretty cool. So you guys, again, keeping the innovation going, keeping things rolling. Again, I love the explanation of this acrylic mouthpiece here. That's something that people are not doing, and the fact that you had that background in waterfowl hunting, and that was a passion of yours, you're making waterfowl calls, it just makes sense to bring that technology in. And I would be willing to bet that a lot of people haven't thought about that, because I'm sure there are a lot of people that hunt elk that do waterfowl, but they don't think of crossing the two, and the fact that you're in the market of building calls, it makes sense. So yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool. Is there anything else that you wanted to hit on or highlight that we haven't talked about?
No, not really. Just as you can tell, I'm pretty passionate about this stuff. I could talk all day about it, and geek out on it. We got some other stuff in the works for next year around bugle tubes and some of that stuff, and I'm really fired up to release that. It's 99% built. It's just we got to get it into a production standpoint or stage, and
sweet.
So I'm pretty fired off. So just keep your eye on Slayer, because we're gonna, like I said, we're not stopping here. And okay, we got some great products. Let's just ride the wave, right? We're gonna keep pushing the envelope, pushing the industry. And what's great about it is, when you have folks pushing the industry, what it's going to do, it's going to force other companies to up their game and become innovative and try to produce better products. And at the end of this, what I'm thinking, or I'm hoping for, is that, and it goes right back to our core values, is that we're giving hunters better products to be more successful, right? And then that success will help keep our sport of hunting here forever, and just keep hunters on the ground with guns and bows in their hands, chasing animals, have, wild lands for all those critters to run on, and keep development off of it and all that. And so that's what I'm hoping the end result of all of us pushing the envelope and trying to make better products for the hunter. So
that's awesome. I love that. And that's a great mentality. To sit there and think, instead of, obviously you want to win, right? There's that competitive mentality,
yeah,
but
yeah,
we were talking about it ahead of time, and why I absolutely love First Phorm, because it's the same mentality of, we know there's competition out there and we want to beat the competition, but we also don't want to beat them into the ground. We want to beat them in what we do. We want to be the best at what we do, and we want to raise the bar so that they continue to step up their game and in turn create the best products and the best experience for the end user, no matter who they end up using. Obviously, we hope people would buy Slayer calls or First Phorm products, but in the end, we just want them to get the best experience. As we say at First Phorm, experience more of what they love, whether that's waterfowl hunting, whether that's elk, whether that's camping, hiking, fishing, whatever it may be. We just want you to experience more of it. And in your case, you want people to have the best calling experience. You don't want it to be ruined by stretched latex and poor tune or tones and things like that can mess someone up if they get in their head that they need to call the best possible, right? So with that being said, that's awesome. We didn't even get into some of the stuff I wanted to talk about, and we might have to do a part 2 here where we talk about your fitness, because you've been doing CrossFit for a while. We talked about that a little bit, and some other things that you really love doing. But
yeah.
I really appreciate your time, Bill. I appreciate you hopping on here and talking about your company, your growth. Again, kudos to you going from 3 to 20 employees. That's a big deal. That's awesome that your company is growing, and I highly recommend that people go and check out your product. You're up there in Idaho, you guys. I've seen the process of how you build these calls. It is, you guys take the care, you keep the quality as sharp as possible, and you want to just, again, have other people experience the best they can out in the woods, on the lake, wherever it is that they're calling. And I definitely appreciate that as an end user.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you having me on here. And the one thing I didn't say that I think is super important, that is near and dear to our heart, is everything we build is here in the U.S. 90% of it's built here in the Treasure Valley in Idaho. The other 10%, 12% is built outside of Idaho, but in the States. So we're doing our hardest to run a company, stay profitable, and build everything here in the U.S. I think that's super important, and we'll continue to do that for as long as we can. So.
That's awesome. Yeah, definitely got to support that as well. The U.S. companies, and again, you're growing, you're hiring people, you're creating jobs, and creating great products as well. So all of those things are great reasons to go and check out Slayer calls. Again, highly recommend the Enchantress. This will definitely be in my pack this year if it will focus on it. Here, there we go. The Enchantress makes it easy. I'm going to do some videos where I've got my kids calling and things like that here coming out soon. And then of course the scale of different, calls. You can go check them out on the website. I'm going to leave the link down below where you can check out Slayer calls and find Slayer on social media as well. Again, thank you so much, Bill, for your time. And guys, like I always say, get out, live your life, and love it.
Yeah.
Hope you enjoyed that conversation. Bill is a stud. He's a wealth of knowledge. He's a hard worker, has built this company and brought amazing people on with him so that the team can continue to grow and build with the dream that Bill had. And I just want to share that with you guys. If you are interested in any of these game calls that we mentioned today, go check it out. Save some money with a discount. I'll leave that link down below. Don't forget to get entered in on the $2,000 giveaway archery equipment. Biggest giveaway yet. I want to say thank you to you guys. I really appreciate you. And of course, leave a like, subscribe. Hopefully you've left a comment with any questions that you have. Anything else that you've got, leave that down below. And last but not least, guys, I want to remind you that you need to be a part of the First Phorm Outdoors Facebook group. Go and join the First Phorm Outdoors Facebook group. You're going to find someone that you will relate with, whether that's camping, backpacking, biking, mountain biking, running marathons, hunting, fishing. Maybe you find your next hunting buddy. Maybe you find your next fishing buddy. Whatever it may be, go join the group. It doesn't cost you anything, and you're going to get an amazing community that you can join. Let them know RedBeard sent you. Hope you have a fantastic rest of your Saturday. And of course, get out, live your life, and love it.